Speaking of pampering myself while talking about the war on Ukraine, I was asking my hairdresser. I always ask my hairdresser what the normies are talking about because he talks to everybody. And I was like, are normies aware of Ukraine? He was like, oh, yeah. And I was like, what do you think they know about it? And he was like, honestly, not much. And that about sums it up, folks.
What do you plan to do about crime in our city?
A lot.
Someday in the future, when we all have augmented reality contact lenses and chips Elon has implanted in our brains when he's emperor of the world, there should be a quiz that you have to answer before you comment on anything. Like, can you identify Ukraine on a map? And you're wrong answer, and you just instantly get lockjaw, and you're like, it's how we all sound anyways. So look, I know a lot of people are like, Bridget, you shouldn't be commenting on this because you're just an idiot and a comedian. And one, you're right. But two, so is Zelensky and also Trump, a wannabe comedian and an entertainer. And I was going to do an episode where I jokingly said I have a hot take on Ukraine. And then I say, I don't know anything. And that's it. The end, folks. But that would be a cop-out because, as my husband reminds me, I comment on plenty of things I know nothing about. And this is a very complex issue. Because I publicly televise this meeting, everyone in the peanut gallery, including myself, has a take and has to have a take. And it's emotionally charged, and we all have feelings about it. And they're all informed by our factory settings and our bias. The propaganda I was fed as a child, I'm Gen X, in case I hadn't mentioned that before, I was raised to hate Russia. They're the enemy. It's in my blood, you might say. Miracle on Ice, Red Dawn, Rocky, Rambo, Nikolai Volkov and the Iron Sheik. My entire childhood was a parade of dead Russians. And to be fair, Putin is a murderous dictator, so it really scratches that itch. It really tickles those factory settings in my brain. Some professional wrestler just fell out of a window in Russia today. And I would have been pushed off a balcony long ago if I lived in Russia. Hell, I might still be pushed off a balcony if I visit Europe and get too close to Russia. Like, for instance, I can probably never go to Croatia. And I guess I'm a neocon because I look at everything happening in Europe and think, yeah, the problem was Biden not going in and kicking commie ass. But can you blame me? I grew up in the 80s where killing Russians was more popular than staying married. And before everyone starts losing their and saying I've gone full lefty, this is the oldest right-leaning position there is. Fight Russia? Are you kidding? Remember Reagan's Goldwater speech?
We cannot buy our security, our freedom from the threat of the bomb, by committing an immorality so great as saying to 1 billion human beings now enslaved behind the Iron Curtain, give up your dreams of freedom, because to save our own skins, we're willing to make a deal with your slave masters. Alexander Hamilton said, a nation which can prefer disgrace to danger is prepared for a master and deserves one.
And remember when Romney said the biggest geopolitical threat facing America was Russia and Obama mocked him?
Governor Romney, I'm glad that you recognize that al-Qaeda is a threat. Because a few months ago, when you were asked what's the biggest geopolitical threat facing America, you said Russia. Not al-Qaeda, you said Russia. In the 1980s are now calling to ask for their foreign policy back.
Well, turns out he was right. And if we had just voted for Romney instead of voting for who Jay-Z and Oprah told us was cool, maybe we wouldn't be in this situation. Look, Obama was cool, okay? It's undeniable. And I think we all realize that I vote for whoever is cool at the time. It's very confusing, and I realize I'm all over the place because I don't fault Ukraine for fighting back, and I don't want Russia to win. Some of the rhetoric that comes from the new right, and I will say it's in the minority, sounds like victim blaming and Putin apology. If someone starts shooting into my house with a machine gun, you can't blame me for shooting back. And it feels gross to even be commenting on it from the safety of my own home with my Bond charge face mask on while people fight and die for their country. I mean, the absolute audacity. We really, truly have no idea what it's like. Look, I'm not a military expert. I know you're shocked to find this out, but I don't think This war will end in a Russian defeat or a total withdrawal from Ukraine unless we put boots on the ground and or escalate this to World War III. I don't get it. This seems like it will only end in catastrophic destruction for Ukraine because they will run out of manpower. And then at that point, the only way to keep the war going is if people from other countries start fighting it. Am I wrong? Can someone with a Ukraine flag in their bio please play this tape forward for me and make it make sense? Are you willing to send your kid to the front lines to defend Ukraine? Is it that important? Do we just keep funding them until Russia magically stands down? Because wouldn't they have done that by now? More importantly, what the fuck is Europe doing other than smoking cigarettes and eating chocolate croissants?
And your sirens sound like gay guys having a threesome.
I demand to know. There was a poll done by The Guardian in December that showed most European countries feel that Ukraine does not get enough Western support. However, only a minority think their country should increase their support. European countries are giving more money for gas and oil to Russia than aid to Ukraine. How can Russia simultaneously be an existential threat to Europe and also one of their primary sources for energy? They're scary, but not too scary to do business with. Germany shut down all their nuclear power plants because an autistic teenager told them to.
How dare you?
And now they're dependent on Russia, which, by the way, Trump predicted back in 2018, and everyone laughed at him.
Germany will become totally dependent on Russian energy if it does not immediately change course. Here in the Western Hemisphere, we are committed to maintaining our independence from the encroachment of expansionist foreign powers.
Well, who's laughing now, Europe? Me! That's who. You can't accuse the U.S. of being the world police and then be mad when we're like, you know what? You're right. We're fucking done. We're not going to be the world police anymore. We're out. And then they're like, you need to do something. You need to do something, please. You're sitting in your cafes talking about what imperialists we are. You know what, Europe? We're done. All right? Pony up yourself. I'll care when Europe cares. How about them apples? They want us to care on their behalf so that they can just eat gelato and stare at the Med. Zelensky was right. We do have an ocean between us. And you know what? It sucks to be you, Europe. Oh, you stand with Ukraine? Well, then open up your wallets and stand with Ukraine. There's this idea that if Ukraine falls, Europe falls. This is the other thing, the kind of argument that I'll hear. Well, bye. You're going to have to figure it out, I guess. I mean, if Russia's having such a hard time steamrolling Ukraine, would they be able to roll over the rest of Europe? Probably, to be honest, actually, now that I think about it. Someone tweeted that Western Europe could be conquered by the National Guard of any one American state. And that includes Rhode Island. I'm tired of being lectured by people who are arresting their citizens for memes and have already been conquered by Islam. And they haven't even realized it. Yeah, I said it. The longer I've talked about this, I've arrived at the conclusion that I do not care at all if Europe falls. Because fuck you, Europe. We've been carrying you since World War I. And have you said thank you once?